Imagine spending months, possibly years, crafting an entire political identity around being tougher on immigration than the last lot, banging on about smashing the gangs, promising bold new solutions, only to end up writing a letter that basically says, yeah, we've got absolutely nothing that works. Well, that's exactly what just happened. Keir Starmer has made an extraordinary 6-word admission that's so brutally honest, it's almost refreshing. But before we proceed, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more updates on the UK political insight. Thank you. Almost. He's confessed there is no effective deterrent in the channel. 6 words that sum up years of failed policy, billions in wasted spending, and countless lives lost at sea. But here's where it gets interesting. At the same time as admitting defeat, France has finally agreed to step up efforts to stop small boat crossings. So is this a breakthrough moment, or just more political theater? Stick around because this story has more twists than a Christopher Nolan film, and the implications are absolutely massive. Let's start with that admission because it's genuinely remarkable. No effective deterrent in the channel. When was the last time you heard a prime minister just come out and say the quiet part loud like that? Usually, politicians dance around failure with carefully crafted phrases about ongoing efforts and work in progress. But Starmer's letter to French President Emmanuel Macron doesn't mess about. He's essentially holding his hands up and saying, look, what we're doing isn't working. It's like admitting you've been trying to fix a leak with duct tape while your entire house floods. Points for honesty, minus several thousand for the fact that this should have been obvious ages ago. In the same letter, Starmer told Macron that it is essential that we deploy tactics this month to combat these perilous journeys. This month, not next year, not when we've done another review, not after we formed a committee to study the committee that studied the problem. This month. There's an urgency there that suggests someone in Downing Street has finally realized this issue isn't going away, and the public is rapidly running out of patience. The small boats crisis has been dominating headlines for years now, and despite multiple governments, multiple strategies, and eye-watering amounts of money thrown at the problem, people are still making that dangerous crossing in record numbers. Now here's where France comes into the picture, and it's been a long time coming. It's understood that France has finally agreed to implement tactics designed to intercept small boats in the channel. This comes after months of pressure from Starmer and the Home Office. Months! Imagine having to spend months convincing your nearest neighbor to help stop people dying in the stretch of water between your two countries. But here's the catch, and there's always a catch. The new tactics will only allow French authorities to stop boats before they become loaded with migrants. Before! Not during the crossing, not when boats are in trouble, but before people even get on board. It's like locking the stable door before the horse has even thought about bolting, which sounds great in theory, but raises about 17,000 practical questions. France had previously said they'd review their maritime rules to allow police to intervene when boats are in shallow water, rather than requiring them to still be on land. Sounds reasonable, right? Shallow water is still technically French jurisdiction. Boats haven't properly started their journey yet. Surely this is the perfect place to intervene. Except the change appeared to have stalled. Just stopped. Ground to a halt. And UK Border Security Commander Martin Hewitt told MPs last month it was frustrating that it had taken so long to bring in these rules. Frustrating. That's very British understatement for what must have been absolutely infuriating behind closed doors conversations with French counterparts. When asked about all this, a number 10 spokesperson did what government spokespeople do best and said, "We never comment on reported leaks of private correspondence." Classic non-denial denial. But they did add that the Prime Minister and President Macron speak regularly on this topic and that they always want to go further on work with French partners on tackling illegal migration. Always want to go further is politician speak for what we're doing now isn't enough, but we need you to think we're trying really hard. They also claim that close cooperation with France has prevented over 20,000 crossings this year. 20,000! That sounds impressive until you realize we're still hitting record numbers anyway, which makes you wonder just how bad it would be without that cooperation. According to French newspaper Le Monde, Starmer wrote to Macron earlier this month, and a document dated November 25th was established setting the framework by which French authorities could intervene in crossings. So there's actual paperwork now. and agreement on paper, which is progress, technically, but as anyone who's ever worked in government or large organizations knows, agreements on paper and actual implementation are two very different things. The BBC reported that the French Maritime Police Force confirmed French security forces will be allowed to stop small boats at sea, but only before passengers are picked up. Only before! This is crucial, because it means once people are in the boat and heading toward UK waters, the French can't touch them. It's a pretty narrow window of intervention. Let's talk numbers for a second, because they tell quite the story. 39,292 people have made the journey across the English Channel so far this year. That's already more than the whole of 2024, when 36,816 people crossed. It's also blown past 2023's total of 29,437. The trajectory is going in completely the wrong direction. However, and this is the only bright spot, the number is still below 2022's total of 45,774. So it's not the worst year on record, which is kind of like saying your house isn't completely burned down, just mostly burned down. Not exactly cause for celebration. Now, not everyone is thrilled about these new interception tactics. Steve Smith, chief executive of Care for Calais, called this a dangerous moment that will cost more lives. His argument is that intercepting boats whilst they're in the water has never been done before because, quite frankly, it puts people at risk. And he's not wrong. The Channel is one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. The water is cold, the currents are treacherous, and the boats these people are using are basically inflatable death traps. Adding maritime interceptions into that mix could genuinely result in more casualties. Smith also rejected the whole idea that enforcement or deterrence reduce crossings, saying they'll just force people to take even more dangerous measures to reach the UK. It's a fair point. If people are desperate enough to risk their lives in a dinghy in November, are they really going to be put off by the possibility of being intercepted? Smith's solution is that the only way to stop channel crossings is to create safe routes for people to claim asylum in the UK. Now, this is where it gets politically spicy, because safe routes is basically a code word in the immigration debate. To some people, it means compassionate, sensible policy that removes the need for dangerous crossings. To others, it means opening the floodgates and encouraging more people to come. The reality is probably somewhere in the middle, but good luck getting any politician to admit that in public. The problem is that without safe routes, people who have legitimate asylum claims have no choice but to risk the crossing. And if we're being honest, that's kind of the point. The lack of safe routes is itself a deterrent, even if it's a brutally inhumane one. Meanwhile, the Home Office confirmed on Thursday that 153 migrants have been sent back to France and 134 have arrived in the UK under the UK-France returns deal. This is the so-called one-in, one-out pilot scheme that came into force in August. The idea is that people who arrive in the UK by small boat can be detained and returned to France in exchange for an equivalent number of people who apply through a safe and legal route. It's a neat bit of political framing, really. For every illegal arrival we send back, we'll accept someone who did it the right way. Sounds fair on the surface, but the numbers tell a slightly different story. 153 sent back, 134 coming in. So it's working, sort of, at a tiny scale. But set against the 39,000 who've crossed this year, we're talking about a drop in the ocean. Literally. Here's what all this really comes down to. Starmer's admission that there's no effective deterrent is basically him saying out loud what everyone already knew. The Rwanda plan was nonsense. The tough talk was just talk. The billions spent on border security haven't stopped people from coming. And now we're trying yet another approach with France that might help a bit around the edges, but fundamentally doesn't solve the core problem, which is that people are fleeing war, persecution, and poverty, and they're willing to risk everything to get to safety. No amount of maritime interceptions or returns agreements changes that basic human desperation. What's frustrating for voters, regardless of where they stand on immigration, is the constant cycle of announcements and initiatives that don't seem to make any real difference. How many times have we heard that this is the solution? This is the thing that'll finally work, only to see the numbers keep climbing. At some point, you have to question whether the politicians actually want to solve it, or whether it's more useful to them as a permanent crisis they can campaign on. Harsh? Maybe. But when you see the same promises repeated year after year with minimal results, cynicism starts to feel pretty justified. The French agreement to intercept boats before they're loaded is something at least. It's a tangible change in policy that could theoretically prevent some crossings, but only if it's implemented properly, only if French authorities actually have the resources to patrol beaches and shallow waters effectively, and only if the people smugglers don't immediately adapt their tactics like they always do. These criminal gangs are running sophisticated operations with lookouts, encrypted communications, and backup plans. They're not going to be stopped by one policy change. They'll find new beaches, new launch times, new routes. That's what makes this so difficult. You're not fighting a static problem, you're fighting an adaptive adversary. Starmer's 6-word admission might be the most honest thing we've heard from a prime minister